So I'm working on a new video that has taken longer than I wanted it to, but in that time I realized I haven't posted a new video in 2 weeks. Over 2 weeks actually. So I rush to think of one I can do in the meantime just so that I have some sort of consistency on my itty bitty channel, and I stumble across a golden turd. Foodfight is a movie from 2012 starring Sheen, Hilary Duff, and a cast of other big-name actors who I can only assume had some sort of debt that they needed to pay off for them to do this movie. This movie is for all intents and purposes just an expensive, soulless ad campaign that some Hollywood exec probably thought of while snorting cocaine off a twink half his age. Just from the trailer and the amount of big-name actors, you can tell that someone wanted so desperately to get seats and butts so they can do a product placement, which I don't even inherently have a problem with. A movie being made for the sole purpose of selling units? Look at Barbie. That was just a well done ad campaign. Well done being the important part here. It was well done, but just looking at this movie, they blew the entire budget on actors. This is one of the ugliest movies I've ever had the misfortune of watching, and this is all before we even get into the plot of the movie. The story is a Toy Story / Night at the Museum fashion thing that like brand mascots come to life when the store closes kind of thing. The story centers around Dex Dog Detective, who is a serial mascot that is styled after noir detectives and his search for his missing girlfriend Sunshine, who isn't really a mascot, just kind of Hilary Duff if she was in Cats. But anyway, she goes missing just before he proposes to her, which fine, whatever. I can work with that. The plot isn't necessarily awful, it's just not very original. One of my biggest gripes with this movie is that the humor is all over the place. If it isn't a brand related pun that they're making, it's a childish joke like farts or something like that, or it's a joke that's way too inappropriate for kids, which often has me asking who will put this level of product placement in a movie for kids, and if it is for kids or if it isn't for kids, why do they have so many inappropriate jokes that's not for kids? And I'm no expert, but you need consistency within your target demographic. Adults can like any show depending on how it's made. Shows like the Avatar: The Last Airbender is a TV show for kids and teenagers, but can be enjoyed by adults because it discusses things that are kind of universal, like growth, change, hope, etc. But with humor, that's not necessarily the case, and I'll explain. You can have adults with childlike humor, like maybe they enjoy fart and poop jokes, and that's fine. A lot of kids like fart jokes, but you can't have flat out sexual innuendo or crass humor in the same movie. One, because it's a bit weird to make sexual jokes and kid stuff, and I don't mean stuff that's like hidden or done in a way that kids don't get. That's incredibly common and meant for the adults watching along with kids anyway. What I mean is doing it blatantly, like having this ADHD riddled squirrel straight up catcall a woman. Not only is that weird, but way too adult of a joke to put in a movie that just had a fart joke in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Two, humor kind of only works forward in a way, in the sense that you can find more people who enjoy jokes intended for adults funny of any age than you will find an adult that finds humor meant for younger audiences funny. And because of that imbalance in this movie that heavily leans towards childish humor, on that basis it never could have worked. Speaking of humor, there's a joke in here that almost made me want to turn the movie off. The brand X detergent, who is the villain of the movie, which for a moment I want to say is such a dumb cop-out. Not only is calling it brand X lame and boring and intentionally safe, but to go so far as to make up brands for the main cast and villains so that no one company gets the spotlight or negative connotation is such a sad and pathetic thing to do. I understand why. Making one mascot the main character will put it above other mascots, and making one a villain will potentially give one mascot more negative press than the others, so you make all the brand name mascots side characters is such an asinine thing to do, and I wish I possessed the vocabulary to truly describe my genuine grievances. The concept of this movie is inherently one big ad anyway. It's just product placement after product placement. To even compare this movie to a commercial would be disrespectful to commercials, but this movie has the audacity to be one big poorly made extended commercial and played it off as a movie, but not the audacity to do the movie part at all correctly, because they're cowards. Every company who had a hand in making this movie, and I relish in every dime they lost, because it's so damn pathetic to just pay a bunch of celebrities to star in a poorly made, poorly written movie and then expect audiences to eat this slop up. It's almost malicious with how everyone involved basically said we can put whatever in front of them and they'll just eat it up. It's gross. Like, it's so lazy to make up a handful of fake make products with a lazy villain like Brand X, make a whole movie around it, just to occasionally throw in Aunt Jemima and other products as though the average American doesn't already participate in brand loyalty anyway. Anyway, I got sidetracked. The mascot for Brand X shows up in Dex's club, and she's meant to be a hot, sexy character, but the art in the movie is so awful that they can't even do that well. She shows up and leaves with Daredevil Dan, who is voiced by Wayne Brady, and as she leaves, she says, "What can I say? Chicks dig chocolate." And that moment painfully reminded me of this.
Sounds to me like blackmail.
You're damn right it is, because, Jet, you are black and you are male.
And this is the second time I wanted to turn the movie off. Brand X's grand master plan is to replace all the name brand mascots with their own, which becomes even more apparent when Lady X, their mascot, goes to a town hall meeting with some Germany during the 30s looking dudes, which I thought was maybe a coincidence or just like a small storytelling device so that people know that these are the bad guys, like these are evil. Then they kick it into high gear and are immediately like, oh no, these guys are heavy-handed fans of the guy from the 30s, which is definitely a curveball in a movie about brands. They even call the mascots who they don't want around undesirables. There's also a vampire bat that looks like he's a New Jersey bar owner who wants to fuck Wayne Brady squirrel. Somehow this movie that was originally about a noir dog detective trying to find his missing cat girlfriend has become a fight of America versus fascism somehow. When Brand X shows up to Dex's club where a bunch of the mascots are and demands that everyone pledge loyalty to Brand X, Dex shows up and everyone breaks out into a song and march about freedom and America and choice. And I'm way too dumb to talk about the politics of all this, but could someone genuinely explain to me how no one thought that associating consuming name brand products with freedom and off-brand with fascism would be a bad idea? But also logically, where's the inherent freedom of choice in all of this? Most name brand products people consume are owned or are a subsidiary of a larger parent company, which I'm not sure if it counts as a monopoly. But if I own all the stores in one town with little to no competition, is that genuine choice or the facade of it? Is that better? The facade of choice? But I guess that is America in a nutshell in a way. As long as you have the facade of freedom, then it's okay. Anyway, politics aside, logically, how can you associate name brand with freedom and off-brand with evil, essentially as though you aren't basically saying our products are pure and true and off-brand shit is evil and wants to destroy your freedom? It's so boring as a plot. Anyway, more importantly than the humor, the politics, my biggest issue with the movie is how the hell Hilary Duff's character shows up again near the end. Dex infiltrates the Brand X tower and sees Hilary Duff's character Sunshine taken hostage. Now, this is impossible because it's revealed that Brand X had her products recalled. And ultimately, this is still taking place in a supermarket. How is she even there? Like, she shouldn't be able to. Her product was recalled. That's the most upsetting part of all of this to me. Politics aside, the movie can't even stick to its own damn writing. Final thoughts. I think this movie is a nigh perfect representation of the disgust a lot of corporations, studios, and the like have for consumers. This movie is a makeshift, poorly written, hour and 30-minute long ad, trying its best not to so subtly make you associate good with their brand and bad with anything else that isn't their brand. And yet it doesn't even do a good job of that. Nor is the message any good, because ultimately it's just saying continue to consume and buy stuff, just buy our stuff and only our stuff. They would have been far better off just making this a 40-minute hypnosis video and just straight up Clockwork Oranging people. This movie is a spit in the face of the artistry of writing, filmmaking, and hell, me as an individual. I take personal offense at this movie being made because it says nothing and doesn't even accomplish the bare minimum of what the medium is meant to do, entertain. This movie wouldn't be half as shit as it is if they actually tried to make a movie. Hell, having a half decent art style would have at least made this movie tolerable or even leaning into how not serious it is. But it can't because these brands are associated with it, so it has to still somehow take itself seriously. This movie came out in 2012, but in the last few months I've seen plenty of poorly made, poorly written movies that were an attempt to try to cash in. Some fail, some don't, but what that proves to me is that these kinds of movies are only going to grow and become more frequent because real genuine creativity is experimental. To make something genuinely good or worth seeing or talking about, you have to take a chance and experiment. In fact, the video I've been working on recently is me watching a bunch of short films, and even the worst of the short films I've seen so far are much more memorable than a lot of the cookie cutter, throw in as many famous people as you can afford movies that have been coming out, because they do something interesting. As the great prophet T-Pain once said,
do something else! Do something else! That's it! That's all we want! Do something else!
Thanks for watching.